welcome back. Today we're looking at the Iliad and we're looking at Book 20, the moment when Achilles steps onto the battlefield. This is the first time we get to see Achilles fight in the entire book. We've been building up to this moment for a very long time. But before we look at the action, let's go ahead and talk about who the big characters are in this book. Of course, it's going to be Achilles, and we're going to really see him in action and see what his rage does on the battlefield. And it's going to be intense. There's two other heroes of particular importance in this book, however. There is Aeneas, one of the Trojan heroes, and in this book he really shines more than perhaps anywhere else. Virgil later on took Aeneas and made another epic just about him. And this is perhaps the first time in the Iliad that we get a glimmer of the kind of hero he's going to be in a future book. We're also going to be looking at Hector, who at this moment, because of his pride and hubris up to this moment, has sort of gotten himself in trouble. But in this book, he's going to begin to show himself as a hero with two sides. He still may have some of that pride, but he also knows he's not as strong as Achilles. And there's that desire to fight against Achilles, but also the knowledge that he's just not quite as strong as Achilles. And that's going to be interesting in Hector's character in this book. We're also going to see all of the gods get involved in this section, but the two that primarily stand out are Poseidon and Apollo. Poseidon's going to have a role to play, particularly in the sequence with Aeneas. And Poseidon isn't a god that just throws himself full force into the battle in this particular section. Rather, he's the one who chooses his moments. And that makes him sort of different from some of the others, who are not quite as bright as he is. That is perhaps true earlier in the book as well, where he chose the right moment to go in for the Greeks. His respect of Aeneas is also an interesting aspect of his character in this book. Apollo, on the other hand, has less respect for his own team, and I think that that's interesting, because Apollo sees himself as above all of the humans, above the puny mortals. And we've seen that several times throughout the book. But here the contrast between Poseidon and Apollo becomes kind of interesting. Okay, let's look at the action of this book. The book opens as Achilles steps out onto the field, but rather than zooming in on the battle immediately, we look up at Mount Olympus, where Zeus calls together all of the gods. And when I say all of the gods, I'm talking every single one of them. Even the little bitty gods that come from streams and rivers. All of them. And he calls them all into council. His council is not very long, though. It doesn't take much time. They all say, hey, so what's up? Why are we here? And Zeus says, hey, see that battle down there? I've been holding you all back because, I had a plan, but we're getting to the climax of the book. Do what you want. Just go at it. Let yourselves go. And so all the gods are like, cool, let's jump into the battlefield. And so all of them pour down onto the battlefield and begin impacting the battle. So it's going to be interesting. And as they rush down, there's this sort of intensity of all the gods impacting the world, so much that Poseidon, who is shaking the earth, shakes things all the way down to Hades, and Hades is like, hey, don't break open my kingdom, man! But we see the gods in contrast as well, and it pits them against each other. Poseidon versus Apollo, Athena versus Ares, Hera versus Artemis, Leto versus Hermes, Hephaestus versus Xanthus. So it's going to be pretty great. The full impact of all the gods on the battlefield will not be fully explored until the next book, but we certainly kick things off in an interesting way. And so now we zoom into the battlefield and we see Achilles looking for Hector, wanting to kill him. And Apollo decides to make things interesting. He swoops up to Aeneas and says, hey Aeneas, there's Achilles over there. Why don't you go get him? And Aeneas goes, because that would be stupid. He'll kill me. There was one time that I fought him and he chased me all over the place and he almost killed me and I was just barely rescued. I don't want to do that again. But Apollo's like, I will give you god power. And so he gives Aeneas power and courage. And Apollo tells Aeneas, oh, remember your lineage. Achilles, he's the son of Thetis, who, yeah, she's a god. But you are descended from Aphrodite. She's a much more, a lot more name recognition there. And Aphrodite is the daughter of Zeus, whereas Thetis is just the daughter of the old man of the sea. You are a much more important person than Achilles is. Surely you can take him. and he sends Aeneas out there after Achilles. Meanwhile, Poseidon, Athena, and Hera, the three big gods on the side of the Greeks, are watching this, and they watch Aeneas run across the field towards Achilles. And they go, should we do something about this? Should we jump in there and, push Aeneas back? And Poseidon says, nah, Achilles is fine. Let's just sit back and watch. But the whole plain filled with men and flashed with bronze, with troops and horse, and beneath their feet the earth quaked as armies rushed together. And now in the no man's land 2 champions, greatest of all, strode and closed, both men burning for battle. Aeneas, son of Anchises, and brilliant Achilles. Aeneas came up first with long, menacing strides, head tossing his heavy helmet, his charging shield thrust out to defend his chest, and shook his bronze spear. But over against him came Achilles, rearing like some lion out on a rampage, and a whole town of men has geared for the hunt to cut him down. But at first he lopes along, all contempt, till one of the fast young hunters spears him. Then, crouched for attack, his jaws gaping, over his teeth foam breaks out, deep in his chest. The brave heart groans. He flashes his ribs, his flanks and hips with his tail. He whips himself into a fighting fury, eyes glaring, hurls himself head on. Kill one of the men or die, go down himself with the first lethal charge. So now, magnificent pride and fury lashed Achilles to go against Aeneas, the great-hearted fighter. As they closed on each other, both in range, the matchless runner Achilles opened up. Aeneas, why so far from your own ranks, standing all exposed? Does your courage really drive you to challenge me, in hopes of ruling your stallion-breaking friends and filling Priam's throne? Even if you killed me, would Priam drop his crown in your hands? For what? The king has sons, he's sound of limb, no half-wit either. Or have the Trojans sworn to carve you a fine estate, the choicest land in the realm, rich in vineyards, and good-tilled fields for you to lord it over, if only you killed me? And then he goes on to remind Aeneas of the time that he chased him down, and nearly killed him until Zeus swooped in and rescued Aeneas. Notice the 2 heroes going up against each other. Now, Achilles is definitely the stronger warrior, but Aeneas has this nobility as he faces off with Achilles. And Achilles doesn't really understand why Aeneas is taking this risk. Why do you want to fight me? Are you trying to win some kind of glory, or maybe Priam will give you the kingdom? He's not going to give you the kingdom. There are hints at Aeneas' future as a king in this, which are continually explored as the book goes on. And Aeneas then replies to him and says, yeah, you may mock me, but let me tell you who I am. Let me tell you my lineage. And then he talks about his family line, which is reminiscent to the moment that Glaucus and Diomedes came together on the field and talked about their families before fighting, but then decided not to fight because their families had ties in the past. But Aeneas claims both godly lineage as well as royal lineage, and he claims that as his reason for desiring to fight Achilles. Now, maybe Apollo put that in his head a moment ago, when he gave him that burst of strength. And it is true that going up against Achilles means him probably going to his death, but that sense of nobility and courage that come from a powerful lineage makes him seem like a noble foe. And he puts up a pretty good fight, too. He throws first at Achilles, and as the spear comes for Achilles, Achilles thrusts up his brand new shield and holds it way out because he's afraid that the spear will go through the shield into him, as spears sometimes do in this book. But he should have remembered that it's a god-made shield, and so it just sticks inside the shield and does not go through. Hephaestus' workmanship is powerful. And so now that he has Aeneas' spear sticking out of his shield, he throws his spear. And Achilles' spear goes through Aeneas' shield as well, but Aeneas holds it to the side, and so it doesn't actually hit him. It just punctures the shield. And so now they're both down a spear. Achilles then grabs out his sword and is ready to charge Aeneas. And Aeneas hoists this giant rock, ready to try to crush Achilles. And the book even tells you how it will go down. The boulder will bounce off Achilles' armor, because it's so well made, and then Achilles will chop Aeneas up. However, at that moment, Poseidon goes, do we really want Aeneas to die? He's such a good guy. He doesn't deserve this death. Now, I'll tell you, my heart aches for great Aeneas. He'll go down to the house of death this instant, overwhelmed by Achilles, all because he trusted the distant deadly archer's urgings. Poor fool, as if Apollo would lift a hand to save him now from death, grim death. Aeneas the innocent. Why should Aeneas suffer here, for no good reason? Embroiled in the quarrels of others, not his own. He always gave us gifts to warm our hearts, gifts for the gods who rule the vaulting skies. So come, Let us rescue him from death ourselves, for fear the son of Cronos might just tower in rage if Achilles kills his man. He is destined to survive. Yes, so the generation of Dardanus will not perish, obliterated without an heir, without a trace. Dardanus, dearest to Zeus of all the sons that mortal woman brought to birth for father. Now he has come to hate the generation of Priam, and now Aeneas will rule the men of Troy in power, his sons' sons, and the sons born in future years. There is a prophecy there in Poseidon that Aeneas is going to have a line of kings. Aeneas is noble and deserves better than just to die here on the field. After all, Apollo is just using him as a pawn to throw him at Achilles, since he doesn't want Hector to die yet. Apollo does not care very much about the men that he's working with. But Aeneas, he deserves better. He will become a king over the Trojans for generations to come. Hera is not particularly impressed with this claim. After all, she just hates the Trojans and wants them all dead. And she said, we're gonna kill Troy. You remember, we're gonna kill Troy. It's fine if you wanted to save Aeneas, I don't care, whatever. But, Troy's gonna go down. And yet Poseidon decides he wants to save Aeneas. So he does. He swoops in there and puts some mist over Achilles' eyes so he can't see for a moment. He snatches the spear out of Aeneas' shield and drops it in front of Achilles so Achilles can have his spear back. And then he picks up Aeneas and flicks him off of the battlefield way over to the side. And then he flies in front of Aeneas and says, Aeneas, what are you thinking going up against Achilles? Have you been listening to Apollo? Because he just kind of doesn't care about you very much. Don't listen to Apollo. Do not fight Achilles. You will die. Once Achilles goes down, then you fight whoever you want. Nobody else can take you out, but don't fight Achilles. And so he sets Aeneas' destiny. And this sets the moment later on for Virgil's Aeneid. Aeneas does become leader of the Trojans. Of course, they're not going to be in Troy anymore because Troy is destroyed. More on that some other time. Meanwhile, back on the field, Achilles gets the mist out of his eyes and he looks around. Aeneas is gone, but there's his spear, handily left for him. And so he shrugs his shoulders and says, well, some god must really love Aeneas too. Oh well, he's probably learned his lesson and is not going to face me again. I'll go kill whoever else I can. And so he picks up the spear and charges back into battle. And Achilles calls out to his men and says, come on guys, back me up. I can't do this by myself. Everybody in line, let's go. And Hector calls out to his men and says, hey guys, we've got the gods on our side. Let's go. And so the two sides crash into each other. But as they're crashing into each other, Hector is ready to go for Achilles. But Apollo swoops in and says, Hector, 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 no, do not go for Achilles. He will kill you. You stay back in the middle of the line. Don't charge Achilles. And so Hector's like, okay. And so he starts backing up into the army. But Achilles is still charging forward. And Achilles starts absolutely hacking and slashing his way through the Trojan line, just slaughtering left and right. And he has several rather dramatic kills, culminating in the slaughter of Polydamas, who is one of Hector's brothers. And when Hector sees this, he can't hold back anymore. He knows that he's not as strong as Achilles. He knows he's been told by a god not to go fight Achilles, but he can't hold back seeing the slaughter of his brother. Polydamas is lying there on the ground with his guts all over the place, and so Hector just is enraged and he rushes at Achilles. Achilles, of course, is delighted to see Hector coming. This is the man he's been wanting to kill. And so he challenges Hector and says, all right, come on then, let me get ya. And Hector replies. But Hector, his helmet flashing, never flinched. Don't think for a moment, Achilles, son of Peleus, you can frighten me with words like a child, a fool. I'm an old hand myself at trading taunts and insults. Well, I know you are brave, and I am far weaker. True, but all lies in the lap of the great gods. Weaker I am, but I still might take your life with one hurl of a spear. My weapon can cut too, long before now its point has found its mark. And so Hector admits, yeah, you're stronger than I am, but that doesn't mean I can't kill you. And so he throws his spear at Achilles. But Athena just blows the spear so it flies back and lands beside Hector. And then as Achilles charges Hector, Apollo, not wanting Hector to be killed, shrouds him in mist and carries him off. Achilles attacks the mist 3 times, but he can't get to Hector. Hector has been rescued. And Achilles is enraged and he shouts insults at him, but tells him, I will find you, I will kill you, it will come. Next time! And then Achilles whirls around and begins hacking and slashing through the Trojans again. And the rest of the book is an increasingly intensified slaughterfest, full of gore and violence. Yeah, I know this book is full of gore. We've seen loads and loads of violence throughout the Iliad. But it's as if the violence intensifies. It takes it up a notch as Achilles slaughters man after man after man in gruesome and gory ways with his spear. In fact, the book ends with this terrifying image of violence and gore, as Achilles runs people down with his chariot. Achilles now, like inhuman fire, raging on through the mountain gorges, splinter dry, setting ablaze big stands of timber, the wind swirling a huge fireball left and right. Chaos of fire. Achilles storming on with brandished spear like a frenzied god of battle, trampling all he killed, and the earth ran black with blood. Thundering on like oxen broad in the brow of some field hand yokes to crush white barley, heaped on a well-laid threshing floor, and the grain is husked out fast by the bellowing oxen's hooves. So, as the great Achilles rampaged on, his sharp-hoofed stallions trampled shields and corpses, axle under the chariot splashed with blood, blood on the handrails sweeping round the car, sprays of blood shooting up from the stallion's hoofs, and churning, whirling rims. And the son of Peleus charioteering on to seize glory, bloody filth splattering both arms, Achilles' invincible arms. There is an intense brutality of Achilles' violence here. And so we will continue the fight in the next book. Let's look at the key features of this section. There are some great epic similes, two of which I read earlier in this video. Achilles as a lion rushing out against a hunter in Aeneas. Or the chariot of Achilles crushing the bodies, similar to the oxen treading out the threshing floor and threshing the wheat. It's a harvest of fury. Of course, the most vivid feature is the violence and brutality of the end. That intensifying violence emphasizes Achilles' fury and his vengeance for the death of his friend Patroclus. It's also, of course, very meaningful that the gods are unleashed at this moment. We are reaching a climactic point where all of the powers are unleashed and finally let free to rage across the battlefield. And we can feel that climactic sense rising here. And we will continue that even more so in Book 21. Thanks for watching. You can click to subscribe or watch another video, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.